Welcome to feeling healthier and happier by healing the root causes of illness, which are usually your emotions, childhood trauma, your gut, your diet, your liver, burnout, and even generational trauma from your ancestors. I'm your host, Dr. Ameet Aggarwal, naturopathic doctor, Gestalt trauma psychotherapist, and family constellations therapist. After this show, you're also invited to join my emotional healing retreats around the world and get your free ebooks and courses on holistic medicine, trauma healing, family constellations therapy, and homeopathy at drameet.com. That's drameet.com. Thanks for listening and enjoy the show.
Dr. Ameet.
Thanks, Brielle. I'm really excited to help people break away from toxic relationships by looking at how we get sucked into a toxic relationship based on patterning from our parents. And we'll look at family constellation therapy and maybe also some homeopathic remedies actually to overcome the abuse during bad relationships.
Yeah, it's going to be a super great conversation today. I want to talk about first what you just mentioned in the beginning about how people get sucked into these toxic relationships, what might make them enter, even if it's unconscious.
I love that question. So when we grow up with our parents, of course, sometimes our parents are a bit dysfunctional or not available, and there's patterns, yeah, in our family system. So we might have an alcoholic father or a very angry mother, but when we're a child, we don't recognize it as fully wrong. Like we associate that with connection and love and belonging. And so it's hard for us to leave that nest, even though it's toxic. Yeah, it feels very familiar to us. And so then when we go out in the world, we're not used to a pattern of love or nourishment, right? We might be used to anger or the father being absent or being like not really recognized or seen, yeah, by the other person, by your partner. Or we might always be missing mom as a child. Mom was, absent or grieving because dad was abusive, whatever. Or she was really upset. So we didn't feel that confidence growing up. And when we go into a relationship, then we kind of do a lot more than's needed of us. We sometimes overgive. We go into codependency in a way. And when somebody's angry with us or just absent, we think, oh, I'm used to that. That this feels familiar. This is how I grew up, and this is my way of belonging or connecting to a partner. So that's a sense of loyalty. We call in family constellations the need to belong. Yeah. We often go into familiar relationships that we had with our parents, now with a partner, because we're always looking for that familiarity. We want to belong to a similar family. And so that's how we kind of attract the wrong partner, the abusive partner, because of our expectations of what love feels like, or what companionship feels like. I know it sounds a bit woo-woo, but trust me, I've seen a lot of people go into the wrong relationship, even though they know better. They're like, gosh, I know better, but this person's just like my dad or just like my mom. Yeah. And there's so much fear of breaking from that relationship because we get a sense of belonging with that person as well. Right? So just as a child, when they were abusive, your parents were abusive, it's almost impossible to break away from those parents, right? Because our survival depends on it. We associate love and connection and belonging and feeling seen by them in that certain way. And that all those things, the nourishment, the being seen by our parents, all that gives us a sense of belonging and security. So the next time we go into a relationship similar, we fall into that trap. Yeah. And that becomes like our home, our comfort zone, despite it being uncomfortable and toxic and painful and even disease forming. We haven't developed the muscle, the emotional muscle to pull away. Right? We don't have the boundary to say, like, just scream or say F off or I'm leaving or that's enough. Yeah. And so we usually get sucked into toxic relationships based on dysfunctional parenting.
hmm Yeah, I could see how many people are just recreating the way their parents loved them further and further into their future without knowing more than likely. And on that same kind of note, why might one person be more likely to be emotionally manipulated than someone else? Like, why are some people more likely to fall into that trap?
Good question. So usually comes down to self-esteem and understanding your boundaries. Yeah, so if you didn't grow up with a lot of self-esteem, you don't know that it's okay to say no. And we're so scared of abandonment or conflict, we put up with stuff. Yeah. So going into conflict means, oh, I'm going to look bad, or I'm not being grateful, or maybe they're going to hurt me. Yeah. If you have a history of violence or an aggressive father or mother, then you're so afraid of retaliation from the other partner, right? They might get upset, and then when a partner gets upset, what happens? It triggers the child in us. Yeah. So even though I might be stronger, you might be stronger than the partner or an adult and they can't really hurt you, because you were shouted at by parents or ignored by parents, or you went through some sort of trauma during childhood, that part of you completely takes over your entire mind in a relationship. So you're literally frozen in helplessness, or I need this person in my life, or it's too dangerous to stand up for myself, or I'm going to be wrong. So as a child, if you stood up for yourself and your dad then shouted at you again, there was something wrong with what you said. Because as children, we internalize it, we blame ourselves. Yeah, the parent is often right in our minds, especially when we're below 7 years old. So that is so programmed in our nervous system that we don't dare stand up or talk back, because we might get challenged and we might be wrong. That's another example of why some people get more manipulated than others. Whereas if somebody had a healthier upbringing, they were given confidence, they could speak their mind, and they were validated as well, then they have more reasoning skills or adult communication like skills, right? And they don't collapse into that fight, flight, or freeze response, or that fear state, yeah, where they feel helpless and that they're going to blame themselves or be blamed.
Mm-hmm.
So it comes down to upbringing. And that's why when people come to see me, either like for sessions or at the retreats we do, we work a lot on disentanglement using family constellations therapy. We work a lot on disentanglement from the patterning that your parents gave you. Yeah, because out of loyalty and love to your parents, we keep that patterning because we feel guilty about letting go of that connection with our parents, and we maintain the patterning out of a desire to stay connected to the family, actually. And at the retreats, we give you an experience of how does it feel to be in your power, in your element, and still not betray your family. In fact, your parents would be proud of you if you transformed all that trauma and pain and stood up for yourself and actually lived your full potential in this world. And so we give you a taste of that, and suddenly your relationships change. Suddenly your self-esteem changes, it gets better. And you look at yourself with more love, more confidence, and more self-value, really. You deserve better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, beautifully said. I love that you just shared about some of that family constellations work that you do. Is there anything else you could share about that and that how that can help heal from family trauma in the past or current toxic relationships?
Yes. Just thinking of some healing sentences one can use. So in family constellations therapy, we use what we call healing sentences, yeah, to release the trauma or entanglements with our parents or other traumas. For example, if mom was abused by dad, typically what happens is you will go and protect mom and reject dad. Yeah. I even had a client who had stomach cancer, and that resolved just by doing family constellations therapy. So as you're protecting mom, you also carry her sadness with her. You're like, oh, let me be sad with mom and connect with her, because that's where our way of bonding. And our other way of bonding is making sure like dad is the mean guy or the bad guy. But what happens is we don't realize we remain sad out of love and loyalty to mom. It's like, okay, as if I'm sad, mom and I can see each other. And we remain in that state just to be seen by mom. And as an adult, that loyalty, that connection with mom is not needed anymore. It never is. Mom doesn't really need you to be sad with her. Yeah, she'd rather you be free and happy in most cases. So a healing sentence we do sometimes is, dear mom, I feel your pain, and even if it costs me my happiness, I'll bear this with you. Yeah, so you're bringing to awareness of what you're doing. Even if it costs you your happiness, you will bear this pain. Most people, when they say that sentence, they get an awareness that, gosh, I realize at all costs I am bearing this pain, but that awareness actually sets them free because they're like, hang on a sec, it's not needed anymore. Some people, if they're more flexible in their mind, we can get them to say, dear mom, this pain is yours. I see what you've gone through. Please forgive me if I leave this with you now. Yeah. Um, I've been sad with you. I feel I felt my pain as well. Give, please give me permission to feel what is mine and give back to you what is yours. I see you as the adult, I'm the child. Yeah, so giving the mom back her power as the mom, the tough one, even though she didn't seem tough, but parents don't want their children to take on all their burdens. We children want to do it. When you say these healing sentences, something in your nervous system just transforms. Boom. Yeah. And you get a sudden awareness that I don't need to carry this with my mom anymore. A better form of respecting my mom is looking at her as saying, gosh, you are capable now, mom, or you were capable. I'm only the child. And is it okay if I, respect your journey, respect your fate, your difficult fate? Just that question gives people a sense of freedom or awareness that, oh, I also have my own destiny that mom wants me to live. So many people who are in depression, especially, are often in this situation, a split conflict between their parents. So when you say these healing sentences, one, the depression lessens, and to lessen it further, some children have the courage to also reconnect with the father, for example. So, dear mom, please forgive me if I look at father again as my dad. Or, dear dad, please forgive me. I rejected you out of love for mom. And I see you're still my father. I'm still your child, even though it's difficult for me right now. So verbalizing these things, you actually get a somatic experience through your body as well. So it's not just a mental phrase. At the retreats, we pick very particular sentences, so I channel them specific to your resonance, your experience, and your resonance, your body resonance. So when you go through these sentences, you will feel a physical transformation as well. And that's what happened with the client with cancer. The stomach cancer went away after we heal these kind of traumas. So we make sure there's a physical resonance because that's more truthful than just a intellectual reasoning with your mom or dad. And that's very important in family constellations. In fact, if people are curious about different sentences, they can say for their family members. There's also an online course on my website, you'll find out at the end, where you can go through different sentences and see how they resonate with you for different situations, whether it's entanglement with mom, dad, or issues with miscarriages, abortions in your family, abuse, whatever it is, they're all there.
Mm, beautiful. Yes, thank you for sharing some of those healing sentences. I loved hearing about those. And you just mentioned how it can be a somatic experience to do this, as well as that we are intellectually saying these sentences. Could you talk a little bit why it's so important that we heal the mind and body together?
My favorite topic. Yes. So often what happens is when we're traumatized or stressed, we go into a fight, flight, or freeze response, right? And our adrenal glands start pumping cortisol and adrenaline. And if we leave these traumas unresolved, our adrenal glands, our whole nervous system is stuck in fight, flight, or freeze. So we're always pushing out adrenaline, cortisol, etc. And an imbalance of adrenaline and cortisol, especially cortisol, that suppresses our neurotransmitters, serotonin, dopamine, GABA, melatonin. It also depletes our immune system and dysregulates our hormones. So many different things happen. Also, our vagus nerve gets dysregulated, and your vagus nerve helps to regulate your liver, your digestion, your breathing, your heart rate, etc. When you get a dysregulated vagus nerve, then your liver doesn't secrete the right amount of bile, for example. It doesn't work as well, and your liver controls bile production, hormone production, metabolism, sorry, and blood sugar metabolism, many different things. So when you're stressed and traumatized, everything goes wrong in your body because of cortisol imbalances, adrenal gland overstimulation, or eventually adrenal burnout. So people who don't resolve trauma for a long time, they go into burnout, and also because of vagus nerve dysregulation. And you can see how then stress and trauma can then lead to chronic diseases. Yeah, that's why it's important to heal the mind. And it's also important to heal the body as well, because the body affects the mind. So over 90% of our neurotransmitters are actually produced in our gut by good bacteria known as our microbiome, and not necessarily only in our brain. And so with antibiotic use, a poor diet, pesticides, chemicals in the drinking water, all these good bacteria get killed off. And when that happens, we go into neurotransmitter depletion, basically. Also, what happens is all these toxins and drugs, etc., they damage our gut. So we get leaky gut syndrome, and toxins flow into the bloodstream, causing inflammation everywhere in the body, leading cause for asthma, eczema, arthritis, a lot of chronic conditions. All this inflammation then goes to the liver. The liver is the master controller of the whole body, basically hormones, blood sugar regulation, like I said, um, everything, literally. Vitamin storage, digestion, detoxification. And so when your liver becomes inflamed, you detoxify less. You have indigestion and poor bile flow, constipation, heartburn, and you also have hormone imbalances. So infertility, PMS symptoms, fibroids, all that comes from liver stagnation combined with chronic inflammation most of the time. And of course, with hormonal imbalances, we also get a mood changes. Yeah, our mood changes. So progesterone, when it goes down, GABA doesn't work so well in the brain, right? And so a lot of women with PMS often have a low progesterone levels, and that's why they get anxious or insomnia or tearful, because their anti-anxiety neurotransmitter doesn't work well. GABA, the anti-anxiety neurotransmitter, relies on progesterone. So you can see how the gut, chronic inflammation and toxicity in a toxic liver then affect, of course, all chronic diseases, but your neurotransmitters and your mood through hormones, through your microbiome, through chronic inflammation, right? And of course, it irritates the vagus nerve. Yeah. So the vagus nerve then that gets dysregulated also through inflammation. When the liver is toxic, then you get increase in lactate levels in the blood. And when people are high in lactate levels, then they get more anxiety as well. Yeah, so the body and the mind need to heal together. You need to release trauma as well as heal your gut, probiotics, vitamin D. Um, I sometimes will use glutamine powder. Then obviously it's very important to detoxify the liver, and I cover all those remedies in the online course. Things like milk thistle, dandelion, bitter greens, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, yeah, all the sulforaphane vegetables. And lastly, it's important to also use homeopathy, because homeopathy goes deeper. So homeopathy is an energetic kind of medicine. And most people only rely on supplements and herbs to heal their body. And those are very mechanical. They push the body, they try and like support, like basically suppress symptoms in many ways. But when you use homeopathy, homeopathy transforms your cellular function. It brings you to a new state of vibration, a new state of being. So all your cells start working better. And that's why in the online course, I always cover homeopathic remedies for liver detox, for releasing trauma. So you can release trauma with psychotherapy, somatic experiencing, Gestalt, EMDR, which I cover. But the homeopathy is so much more powerful. Yeah. Because in homeopathy, we look at the type of trauma you had. So if somebody was abused, um, and was very withdrawn, that's one specific remedy. Or if they're abused and very anxious and tearful, that's a different remedy. For example, somebody who's very tearful and they've gone through a lot of embarrassment or betrayal, I might give Ignatia. And that's great if you're in an abusive relationship or a toxic relationship and you're really suffering. Ignatia is a great one. If you're withdrawn and sad and resentful, that's more Natrum muriaticum. Yeah. Um, and then there's other kinds of traumas that people go through. Maybe they lose a loved one, right? That's a different trauma from abuse. So based on that trauma, then we choose different remedies as well. So we look at the type of trauma and how you're responding. Are you tearful? Are you guilty? Do you feel like committing suicide? Are you hard on yourself? Yeah. People who are very hard on themselves and feel guilty and regret, that's more aurum metallicum, which is homeopathic gold. So all these pictures are covered in the course. So it's important to understand the type of trauma you've been through, as well as how you are behaving, all your symptoms. And then when you pick the right remedy, it goes much deeper for you and you get a deeper transformation. And that's why people heal much faster when they combine homeopathy, herbs, and emotional release together.
Mm. Yeah, really interesting to hear about how important the body is in this healing that many of us probably consider only mental, as
Yeah.
well as hearing about how homeopathy can help in these cases. That was also really interesting. And I was just wondering, what does it mean to have emotional freedom? Is this something that we can access if we work through all of our blocks?
I believe so. I believe so. So emotional freedom, I believe, is a sense of confidence, not feeling so threatened, being able to be authentic and speak your mind. Yeah. And self-regulate as well. So if there is stress in the environment or you're around strange people or toxic people, then you can make quick decisions or even decisions, just normal decisions to walk away, stand up for yourself. Yeah. Feeling safe in your body. And if you need to run away and that's the most intelligent thing to do, that's also okay. That's also emotional freedom because you know, hey, these people are not safe and I need to just move away without feeling the shame of having to run away, right? We put a lot of pressure on ourselves to kind of stand up for ourselves, or we beat ourselves down if we don't stand up for ourselves. And so when you are okay with your decisions and you're comfortable inside your heart and you're making the right decisions that give you that sense of safety, freedom, and joie de vivre, and you get energy back in your life, I believe that is emotional freedom, right? And that's what we focus on at the retreats is really letting go of traumas and self-sabotaging beliefs and behaviors that keep you small and stuck and subserving to get you back into your power, to get you back into your authenticity and like find your voice again so that you live the most fulfilling life that's available to you if you're willing to receive it.
Hmm. Yes, beautifully said. Thank you so much for talking a little bit about emotional freedom. I would imagine that is what many people strive for, even if they're unaware of that. That's what they're truly seeking underneath all these issues.
Mhm.
And let's just talk a little bit about how people can dive even deeper with you. I know you've touched on some of those great resources on your website. I know you have a free ebook and some videos, and we have a button that leads over to that below if you'd like to just tell us about what you got on there.
So my website is drameet.com. There's a free course on healing the gut, the liver. There's an emotional healing exercise in there. There's lots of master classes on how to combine homeopathy, family constellations therapy, and naturopathic medicine. Yeah. How to support your adrenal system, especially if you're burnt out, because people who go through toxic relationships are often burnt out and they don't have that energy. There's a full online course which goes through all my protocols. There's a homeopathy course as well, in depth. There's a family constellation course with all the healing sentences. Then there's also links to the retreats. We're doing some in Kenya, in Greece, possibly in Costa Rica and Peru.
Mm.
It's gonna be lots of fun, lots of deep healing. And the thing is, Brielle and those listening, some people just dabble on surface or superficial therapies, yeah? But when you get held in the right space and really work at the core, get holistic medicine to really nourish your body and really go to those inner child wounds in the right way, in a safe way, you get a much more longer lasting transformation. Otherwise, if you're doing analytical therapies like CBT, etc., you're not moving forward as much as you could do with the Gestalt therapy and the family constellations therapy.
Mhm. Yeah, super interesting. And thank you so much for offering all of those great resources. And as a reminder to everyone watching and listening, you can click the button below to head over to Dr. Amit's website and check all of those great things out. And are there any final insights you'd like to share before we wrap up, Dr. Amit?
Hmm. If you are stuck in a difficult or toxic, abusive relationship, first step is to forgive yourself, yeah? And find out how you got there. Start looking at what your patterns are with your parents. What kind of behaviors did your parents have? And what agreements did you go into with your parents? Did you agree to be small? Did you agree to put up with stuff? And that's okay. Don't say that you're wrong for doing that. Just notice those agreements because the awareness of the agreements will help you let them go. Automatically, when you let go of agreements with your parents that don't serve you anymore, you grow up so much more faster and more confident, and the abusive partner will shrink. Yeah, they will seem less threatening because often people feel threatening because they kind of mimic the threatening parents in our past, in our childhood, or threatening teacher or other people. Yeah. And the moment you become aware of the agreements you made as a child and let those go, the people in your present life, they're less threatening. Yeah, they don't have a hold on you anymore. And then you can start walking your life in a healthier way. Thanks for learning how to heal the root cause. Make sure to also get your free ebook and courses I've created for you on naturopathic medicine, trauma healing, family constellations therapy, and homeopathy at drameet.com. That's drameet.com. Thanks and lots of love.